All right, all
All right,
yours.
guys. Let me just go ahead and share my screen here. All right. So obviously, I'm going to go through some OLP principles. I'm a huge fan of what Charles Bentley does. Everything that he does is based in science and tons of research. So as soon as I heard his stuff and I read his book, Building the Block, I kind of fell in love with it. Yeah, I figure we'll go from there. Let me. All right. So a little bit of background on me. I played football at North Central College from 2005 to 2007. I sustained a knee injury going into my junior year. Not super bad or anything like that. I tore both menisci. But what sucked is the MRI missed it, and I trained on it for 3 months, rehabbed it, lost my season, took a med red. And then when I had my meeting, the O-line coach asked me to be his assistant and essentially take the freshmen on my own. And they were like, hey, if we suck in 3 years, this is on you. So in 2008, I actually coached at NCC. We went 11-1 up until the most recent season. We were the first highest ranked class. We reached second in the nation that year, which was a blast. After I graduated, I went to Fenton High School. I was there for 2 years. I went to Plainfield East. Tyler Lancaster plays for the Packers, was my center and my defensive end there, which was awesome. He's a great kid. I coached at Glenbard North from 2012 to 2015, and Justin Jackson's currently playing for the Chargers, he's also a great kid. And then I went to Hampshire High School for 2 years, and then now I'm at Central High School in Burlington. I'm going into my third season there. As far as FIST goes, I started in 2010. Obviously, it's still running. Shut down because of COVID-19, but you know how that goes. But yeah, like I said, it's kind of funny because FIST and offensive line performance kind of started at the same time. LaCharles started a year earlier than I did. But I taught similar stuff just because that's the way it was taught to me in college. But he really hammers coaching cues and eliminating cues that are counterproductive to the way we want to move. And that's where these principles come in. And that's where, the terminology comes in. I've talked to a couple of coaches and a couple of guys, a guy that Drew knows very well, Mike Kubis. He kind of hooked me up with Drew here. And Mike basically said, like, hey, we need to start trying to normalize and standardize what we do in the offensive line world, just because, while kids do need more tools in the toolbox, as O-line coaches know, we have 8 million different ways to say the same block. So it's kind of, standardizing our terminology and things like that. Let me see here. There we go. The teaching progression, again, for offensive line performance, they call it the Waterfall Method. And it's basic. It just dumbs everything down and starts from the absolute most basic form of teaching progression and works its way up. So the first thing that they go over is the 8 angles of offensive line play. They work into stance, then force to the ground, drive catch, and finally the pressure to pressure phase, P2P phase, which is a block. So the 8 angles of O-line play, it's a very, very simple concept. There's literally 8 angles that we all move through, and it's not just offensive linemen. It is literally everybody on the field. Obviously, there are degrees of variance, but you have straight forward, you have straight back, you have 90 degrees to the right, 90 degrees to the left, 45 to the right, 45 to the left going forward, 45 to the right, 45 to the left going backward. So obviously, you look at it, it's almost like a compass rose here. But the cool thing about it is there's variance within all of these all of the angles and stuff like that. So, an offensive lineman may not go straight forward. He may take that 22 degree angle based off of the defender's alignment instead of a 45 or straight forward or what have you. So there's no absolutes in the angles. The 8 angles, like I said, they dictate every movement in football. Oh, you want to skip pull? Cool. You're most likely going to wind up going at a 90 degree angle and or a variance of that angle. So it dictates everything that we do, and it dictates every movement that we have in football. So realistically, if you hammer this concept with your offensive lineman and say, hey, there are 8 angles that you need to work on. it's as simple as that. It kind of takes out the complexity of, well, he's aligned, he's a loose 3. Now, do I have to take that 47-degree angle? And that's a big thing for me is, we always say, oh, you want to step at a 45, or take a more severe angle, make it like a 15-degree angle. I have not met one high school kid that can say, hey, I know that I took a 14-degree angle there instead of a 13-degree angle. So it's one of those things that, you allow for the variance, but you don't necessarily have to give the exact angle. It's not like, oh, you have to take a 10-degree angle here to make that down block. It's nothing like that. And really it makes it a lot more simple and a lot easier for kids to understand. The guys that I train and the kids that I coach at Central, when I tell them like, hey, what happened there? Why didn't that block? Well, I take the right angle, coach. Okay, well, what's your aiming point? So the 8 angles kind of dictate aiming point and everything like that, dictates movement. The 345 stance. So I was a typical, straight foot, straight toes, offensive line coach until about 2011, 2012 ish. And then I started to play with it a little bit more duck footed. And then in 2013, 2014, I really started to kind of play with the 345 stance and teach it to the guys that I was training. I didn't really work with it in the guys that I was coaching because my head coach weren't really bought in with that yet. At that point, I was still one of the lower level coaches. I didn't want to mess with what they were doing on the varsity level. I wanted to keep continuity. Finally, when I got over to Hampshire, I had my own kids. I was top guy dictating technique and things like that. That's when I really started to put the 345s into practice with my guys. And it opened up a whole new world of movement for them. They were very, very difficult moving in and out of their stances, and they labored a lot. So the process to get in your stance, the 2-point stance, you want to find stability and power. You find stability basically by getting just outside your shoulders in your stance. And, we always say, feet shoulder width apart. And again, finding stability, it varies between athlete. The thing about, athletes, obviously we all have different builds. I played freaking tackle at 5'11", 250 at North Central, which that doesn't happen. I'm short and dumpy. That shouldn't happen at all. But you find your stability, you find your power, because it's different for every athlete. You go 45 degrees with the back foot. Okay. It just says with the back. It's a typo on my part. You go 45 degrees with the back foot. And what that does is it unlocks the hips and allows more efficient movement. So when you have your feet and your toes pointed straight forward, your hips are actually in a closed position. And basically what that means in that closed position, it means that you're going to move straight forward. If my toes are going this way, I am moving this way. It's going to take more effort for me to be able to going to my left. So toes straight forward, you're in a closed position with your hips. That back foot being at a 45-degree angle, and that up and allows you to move through the 8 angles a little bit more freely. All right. So you go back foot after you find your power. Again, touching on the power point, the one thing that I really want to hammer with that is, I was a big toe to instep guy. Hey, your back foot's too far back. Go toe to instep. Now with the variance between athletes and how athletes differ so much in their own biomechanics and their body makeup, I let them find their power by figuring out where they're comfortable and where they feel powerful with their foot back. I mean, if you watch college football now, and you watch pro football, there's no two stances that look the same. They all, we all try and make that cookie cutter stance and make our kids look the same, and it's just not feasible. The kids are very, what's the word I want to? Yeah, the kids are just different. Their body makeup is different. Their flexibility is different. Their power is different. Their equilibrium is different. So they're going to feel power and stability in different stances. So once you have that power and that foot is back, your back foot is at a 45, you're going to notice that the hips are cocked a little bit off to the right or the left, depending on which foot is back. You want to centrate that hip. And basically what that means is you want to push the hip pocket forward. They also call it closing the gate. I use close the gate, but basically it squares the hips up to the line of scrimmage. When the hips are squared up to the line of scrimmage, it makes everything obviously square to the line. You are able to move in all angles efficiently. You're not giving a soft edge. You're not giving a soft edge to the inside. So centrating that hip and engaging those adductors, it really keeps everything in line with the line of scrimmage. Getting down into your 2-point, hands on your thighs, you want to lock your arms. There's going to be a video that demonstrates all this stuff right after this slide. Hands on your thighs, lock your arms. I like the term Beyonce the booty. Basically what it does, when you say Beyonce the booty, all the kids know Beyonce twerks, she got a big butt. So you say Beyonce the booty and they start to push their butt out and they push their butt back, initiating that hip hinge. And you want to drop down until the wrists cup the knees. You don't want to break in between your wrist and your knee, but your wrist is going to cup your knees. And it sounds like a really long checkpoint, but it doesn't take that long once you get the hang of it. And then in a 3-point, it's the exact same process as this. You don't want to sink your hips. You just want to get the hand on the ground. You don't want to really drop down. It's funny because one of my kids just sent film to Oklahoma, and he was, what should I do? What should I do? I said, send him film of you getting in your stance, send him film, drive catch, so on and so forth. And I kind of took him through the steps of the waterfall method, and he sank his hips in his stance. So I made him redo the entire video. I was like, dude, you have to redo it. I said, you're sinking your hips in your stance and you're getting out of your proper biomechanical phase. So you basically, like I said, you just want to get that hand on the ground. So let's see here. Is this going to play? One on the left is going to be, one on the left is a center stance. So my feet are even, slightly duck-footed. I get into that 2-point stance. I'm actually going to pause this one real quick. Notice that the elbow is pointed straight forward. This is something that I really want to touch on here. When it comes to, no, that didn't work. Hold on. When it comes to snapping, I found, and this is a tip that I actually took from OLP, having that shoulder centrated and that elbow pointed forward right there, that helps immensely in regards to a traditional shotgun snap or even a dead ball snap. But you see right there, there's no break in my wrist. I'm going to come over here to this one. This is more of a guard or a tackle. I'm in a right-handed stance here, demonstrating. I see how I find my stability. I find my power. My foot's at a 45. All right, reset, make sure I'm good. I push the hip pocket forward. There's my 2-point stance. There's my 3-point stance. Side view. Sorry about the gut. I got the quarantine 15 going on. No break in the wrist. Notice that. 2-point stance. There's no break in the wrist when it gets to my knee. It's a nice cup right here, and there's no gap. That is my 2-point stance. My core is engaged. I have a nice 45 with my hip. I have a 45 with my shin. I have a 45 with my foot. There's your 3 45s. My scapulae are retracted. My core is engaged. I'm in a good posture here. Again, to get down into my 3-point, I just get the hand to the ground. There's no drop in my hips. That's my 3-point stance right there. So that's the 345 stance. Like I said, with my guys, it's helped them immensely. I've had a couple of kids in the last 2 years that weren't even getting any looks. And once they finally figured out how to move biomechanically and they were able to drive people out, it really, really helped them. So the 345 stance is huge. Getting into force through the ground, basically what you need to do before you start putting force through the ground is you want to determine the angle that your linemen own. And what that means is based off of the play, how much force are they going to need to put through the ground in order to get to their aiming point. So we'll go with pass pro, since pass pro is an absolute 100% like bugaboo for offensive linemen. And it's something that a lot of guys, a lot of guys struggle with, especially at the high school levels. You want to find that aiming point. So for me and what I teach my guys, aiming point is always knee to crotch relationship. If I have a right tackle that gets knee to crotch on a defensive end, he only has a one-way go, and that go is outside. If he comes back inside, that tackle is going to bury him. And that goes same thing with the guard and the 3 technique. As long as you can give them a one-way go, you know where they're going. So that aiming point is huge. It's the most efficient way to get to that aiming point is putting force through the ground, okay? Force is pushed through the ground and away from the body. A big point here is that you don't want to put force down directly into the ground, or you don't want to put force down at a slight angle. You're literally trying to push the ground away from your body. If you push down too hard, that's when we start hopping, right? We're not moving in an efficient way for us to get to our aiming point. We're not getting to our guy. We're hopping to get there. And you'll see that a lot with kids that are just starting to learn this. It's a big part of really working that and making sure that the kids aren't hopping. They're pushing ground away from their body. This is a pound the post example. This is one of my kids from Glenbard North. He's in good posture. His scapula retracted. His core is engaged. His elbows are torqued. Thumbs are slightly out. His adductors are engaged, so his knees are inside of his ankles. If we start flaring our knee, we leak power like crazy. And the more we leak power, obviously the less efficient we're going to be, and we're not going to be able to impose our will on the guy across from us. He has his 345s maintained through movement, so he has his 45 with his foot, 45 with his shin, and it's not quite a 45 with his hips, but again, the angles aren't absolute. He has good hip hinge, and he maintains his athletic posture. Now, if he wanted to pound the post and come back down inside, he's going to put force through the ground, and he's really going to push the ground away from his body, right? So notice that the arrow is not coming straight down here. It's coming down through the ground and away from his body. And that's something that I really hammer with my guys when talking about force through the ground, and eventually when we get into drive catch, is this arrow right here. It's absolutely paramount. And relaying that to your guys and saying, hey, we need to push the ground away from our body. We're not just pushing the ground down. If we're pushing the ground down, that's when we're going to start raising our height in everything that we do. You think about a squat or a jump, whatever, a power clean. Whenever you're raising yourself up, you're putting force down directly through the ground. So instead of putting force directly into the ground, straight down, you're pushing it away from your body. And that's what's going to make you move. It's essentially the basis of all movement, which is the drive catch. So it puts force in the ground into movement patterns. As an offensive line coach, I do not look at height or anything like that. I look at movement patterns. I got a kid that's 6'4" right now, and he's 300 pounds. And I told him straight up, he plays for me, and his dad said, well, Michael Orr got his scholarship because he played left tackle on the blind side. I said, your kid doesn't move like Michael Orr. Your kid moves like a guard. He is a guard, and he has guard movement patterns. He's not quite athletic enough. He doesn't have the bend that a tackle needs. I base everything into movement patterns. I don't base anything off of it. Would I love a 6'6", 300-pound left tackle that moved like a power forward? Sure, that'd be awesome. But if I have a guy that's 6'2", 260 and has that movement pattern, he's probably going to be playing guard for or tackle for me. So drive catch is really the basis of all movement. When you think about any running back, when they jump cut, do they cut off of their outside foot or their inside foot? They push the ground away from their outside foot and move to this. So if they want to cut to their left, if I want to cut to my left and I'm running, am I going to cut off my left foot and throw my body that way? Or am I going to plant my right and push? You're going to push, you're going to put force through the ground, and you're going to move yourself away. It's the basis of all movement. And that's something that I stress with my guys. Even when you walk, you're pushing the ground away from your body. And when you want to switch directions, you are again pushing ground away from the body, and you're catching yourself on your other foot. So Barry Sanders, like god of the jump cut, gets into a hole, jump cut, he pushes off of his left, catches himself on the right, and he's gone like a shot. The biggest thing with drive catch is you want to drive through the midfoot or the instep. I've heard it called both things. That's why I have both things in here. I've been an instep guy for ever. So I just keep saying instep, but I've heard it both ways. But you want to drive through the midfoot, drive through the instep. You want to keep your adductors engaged through movement. You want to catch on the opposite leg and then drive off of that leg to continue your motion. And the cool thing with drive catch is it's utilized through all 8 angles. You don't really have to, switch anything up when doing this. Here's a pretty good example. This is the kid. I took that still. This is his drive catch. He's going to drive off of his left leg, catch on his right. If this would load, please. There we go. So notice he's driving off of that left leg, catching on his right. He stays square to the line of scrimmage. He keeps his adductors engaged, core is tight, and then he pounds back down inside, and he's still square to the line of scrimmage, still has his 345s with his back leg. Everything is in tight, elbows are torqued, core is engaged. That drive catch. He drives off of his left and catches on his right, and then drives off his right and catches on his left. So drive catch is the next part. P2P phase, the block. Stance, 8 angles of offensive line play, force to the ground, drive catch. Everything leads to this. The biggest thing that I hammer, especially because we know that our game is under attack and we're losing kids left and right, keep the head out of the block and out of coaching cues. Instead of on a reach block saying you got to get your head across, give them an aiming point for their feet and for their hands. So for my guys, when I have a guy that needs to reach, I say get your near pocket to his far pocket. That's what I want them to do. Get your near pocket to his far pocket. Get your play side hand to the play side number. It keeps the head out of the block, and it gets the kids in the thought process of, hey, I need to get over there. I need to get my near pocket to his far pocket. The P2P phase is the expression of strength, stability, and power. Everything that we've done and everything that we've talked about is expressed through this movement. It's imposing your will on the guy across from you. And that's what we love about offensive line play. And that's why I played O-line for 13 years. I didn't care about the accolades. I didn't care about touchdowns. I just wanted to beat the hell out of people. And it's fun. So, it's the ultimate expression of imposing your will on somebody. Obviously, I have here low man wins. How many times have we heard that? A lot. That low man wins is not always true. I had a kid last year, 6'5", 275, that's playing at Western Illinois. He was a stud. But if I put him in the chutes and put my 5'9" center in the chutes, my 5'9" center is going to be able to maintain his power angles better, and he's going to be able to stay lower. If my 6'5" guy tries to get under that 5'9" center, he's not going to be able to move as well, and he's not going to be able to express enough power, strength, and stability to be able to move that. Generally, this isn't all the time. It's not a 100%. It's not a 100% absolute. But the athlete that has the mechanical advantage that it's created in our stance is the athlete that wins. I don't do board drill. Board drills really aren't that realistic for us. So I try and stay away from it. I'm not going to knock people that do it. I used to love it. But I've just noticed that my kids lose all of their technique when they do it. They just, all their weight goes on their hand. They don't get in the proper stance. They're up on their toes. They knock heads first. So I stay away from it. But when you put people into a real life situation or a game-like situation, it's the people that have created their mechanical advantage in a stance that wins. And that happens through properly aligned angles and joints, centrating the hips, making sure that the elbows are torqued and the thumbs are out, getting inside leverage. And you got to maintain that advantage through the pressure-to-pressure phase. Hands, they're critical. We know that as offensive linemen. You want to get that torque and express that full strength capability. You want to centrate the shoulders and internally rotate those elbows. So my kids are all of our kids obviously are too young to know who the Fonz is. So I have to explain it to them. But I tell them, well, you guys want to be Fonzie. When you guys block, when you throw that strike, you want to be here. That's Fonzie. Hey. So they look at me like I'm nuts, but it works. Hands continued. You want to create a slapping motion. So I was a big double under guy. I was a massive Paul Alexander fanatic back in 2009, 2010, 2011 era. And I was big in the double under and absolutely loved it. But with the double under, you're slapping up and you're actually disengaging your posterior chain, right? And so I have this down here, keep hips behind us. I'm pointing at my screen like you guys can see it. I have keep hips behind us, so I'm going to get to that in a minute, but the double under essentially eliminates that point. You want to violently rotate your thumbs away, right? So if you're striking, you want to rotate those thumbs away and centrate those shoulders, torque the elbows. And the lift becomes natural. So you don't have to flip your hips into it. You don't have to roll your hips into it. It becomes natural. When you torque and you strike and get those thumbs up and elbows torqued, shoulders centrated, and you're creating that force, that low to high strike comes into play anyways. And it allows you to keep your hips engaged. When we keep our hips engaged, our posterior chain stays engaged. We keep power and stability through movement. It allows you to apply force to the ground and away from your body. If you start to roll your hips into your block and climb the defender, climbing the defender, yeah, okay, that's great. Now you've gotten the defender close to you, but you've lost all power. You're not going to be able to get that vertical movement that you want as an offensive lineman, or that you want to see as an offensive line coach. Pulling your hips into a block essentially makes you put your force down into the ground instead of pushing the body or pushing the ground away from the body. And it keeps that drive element established with power. Like I said, I can try and drive with my hips rolled forward, but let's be real. When you push a car, just like sprint mechanics, your posterior chain is engaged. And that's huge when it comes to the P2P phase. Here's a video. This is Western Kentucky's left guard. You can see him coming off a knee because we were just kind of working progressions here. So he's going to drive off of his right foot. And actually, one of the things that I told him after I watched this video, when I made the presentation, I sent it to him. I was like, dude, we got to get on your instep more. But you can see that he drives off the foot. He torques his shoulders. There's no double under. It's a good, solid strike. He maintains his posture. His core is engaged. Adductors are engaged. And he gets a great drive. You'll hear a solid strike, too, and he doesn't double under the ball. Oh, no, what just happened? Come back here. Here it is.
Set. Hit. Twist.
So it's a solid strike. His hands are
set. Hit.
Hands
Twist.
are good. You know, he really drives
set.
off of that leg and that drive
Hit.
catch, and force to the
Twist.
ground is working pretty hard in that clip. I threw this one in. If you guys have any questions or anything like that, here's my email, cell phone numbers on there. Feel free to call me, text me, whatever. Yeah, I'll answer any questions that I can.